I'm sipping coffee on my porch when four HOA clowns in matching polos storm up, flashing fake badges and waving plastic handcuffs, claiming they're arresting me for, get this, painting my garage wrong. Leading the pack? Karen, the neighborhood tyrant with a smirk that could sour milk. They've got no clue I'm the real town marshal, and when I flip open my badge, their little circus collapses faster than a house of cards. But here's the kicker. Karen doesn't quit. She's got more tricks up her sleeve, each crazier than the last. Want to know how far this HOA queen goes before she crashes? Stick around. This showdown's too wild to miss. If that hooked you, smash that like button. Let's hit 39 likes for this epic takedown. And hit subscribe for more insane stories like this. You won't believe what Karen tries next. The morning sun spilled over my front porch, painting the weathered boards a warm gold as I sat with my coffee, steam curling up in lazy wisps. My house, a sturdy two-story with cedar siding, sat smack in the middle of Juniper Lane, a quiet street in a town too small for its own good. Beyond the picket fence I'd built myself, the neighborhood stretched out in neat rows of lawns and driveways, the kind of place where folks waved hello but minded their own business. At least, most of them did. I took a sip, the bitter brew waking me up slow, and let the stillness settle in. This was my slice of peace, earned, not borrowed, and I guarded it like a hawk. I'm Cole Tanner, town marshal for the past decade, badge number 47 pinned to my wallet and a Glock holster in the shed when I'm off duty. Not that I needed it much. Our biggest crimes were kids swiping apples from old man Grady's orchard. But the HOA? That was a different beast. The Juniper Lane Homeowners Association had been a thorn in my side since I moved in 5 years ago. They weren't your average clipboard-wielding busybodies. These folks acted like they ran a miniature dictatorship, complete with rules so petty they'd make a saint snap. My fence was 2 inches too tall, they'd whined. My blue front door clashed with community aesthetics. Once, they fined me for parking my truck, my perfectly legal, registered truck, too close to the curb. I ignored them, paid the fines when I had to, and skipped their pointless meetings. Life was too short for their nonsense. That morning felt different, though. I just settled into my rocking chair, Rusty, my old tabby cat, curled up on the railing, when I caught a flicker in the window's reflection. 4 figures stood on my sidewalk, stiff as statues, their shadows stretching long across the grass. I squinted, setting my mug down. They wore matching green polo shirts, sunglasses perched on their noses like they'd raided a discount bin, and carried an air of authority so fake it almost sparkled. One held a notebook, scribbling like he was cracking a case. Another had a plastic radio clipped to her waist, dangling like a kid's toy. And in the middle, arms crossed tight, stood the ringleader, a woman I'd tangled with before. Karen Thompson, 50-ish, chubby with a belly that strained her red floral blouse. Her short blonde hair dyed to a brassy sheen. Her pale skin was pinched red around her cheeks, and her thin lips twisted into a sour smirk, like she'd just bitten a lemon and blamed me for it. I'd seen that look plenty. Every time she'd marched over to complain about my non-compliant mailbox or the time I'd told her to shove her meeting invite where the sun don't shine. She fancied herself the HOA's queen bee, ruling with a laminated rulebook and a posse of yes-men. Today, though, she had a gleam in her eye that said she'd upped her game. I took a deep breath, drained my coffee, and hauled myself up. Rusty flicked his tail, watching as I crossed the porch and swung the door open. Before it was halfway, Karen's voice hit me like a freight train. "Cole Tanner," she barked, chin high like she was addressing a press corps. "You're in serious violation of HOA rules, and we're here to take action." Her crew nodded in sync, a chorus of bobbleheads. I blinked, leaning against the frame, half expecting a camera crew to pop out. Was this a prank? A bad reality show? "Morning to you too, Karen," I said, voice dry. "What's it this time? My grass grow a 1/4 inch too long." She didn't flinch, just shoved a piece of plastic in my face, a flimsy badge with HOA enforcement scrawled a marker. "You're under investigation," she declared, pausing for effect, for unauthorized garage painting, an unregistered vehicle, and inappropriate behavior toward the community. I stared, the absurdity sinking in. My garage hadn't changed color in years. My truck was legal, and inappropriate behavior meant I'd skipped her gossip fests. I almost laughed, but then she dropped the bomb. "Due to your refusal to comply," she said, puffing out her chest, "the HOA is exercising its right to civil custody. We're taking you in." "Custody?" My jaw dropped. She nodded at the beer-bellied guy beside her, who pulled out plastic handcuffs, dollar store zip ties, really, and grinned like he'd just been deputized. I crossed my arms, coffee mug still warm in my hand, and let the silence stretch. These clowns thought they could arrest me. On my own porch. In my own yard. "Interesting," I said, tilting my head. "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" Karen's smirk widened, her crew shifting closer, ready to pounce. Little did they know, they just kicked a hornet's nest, and I was the hornet. I reached for my wallet, the real badge gleaming inside, and braced for the fireworks. This was about to get good. The air on my porch thickened with Karen's bravado as she stood there, chest puffed out, her red floral blouse straining against her chubby frame. Her short blonde hair caught the morning sun, glinting like a cheap halo, but her sour smirk was anything but angelic. Behind her, her posse of HOA enforcers shifted on their feet. 3 clowns in green polos, sunglasses sliding down sweaty noses, looking like they'd rehearsed this in a basement somewhere. The beer-bellied guy dangled his plastic handcuffs with a grunt, his too-tight shirt riding up to flash a hairy gut. The woman with the toy radio clutched it like a lifeline, and the notebook scribbler scribbled harder, as if documenting my doom. Rusty watched from the railing, tail flicking, probably wondering why I hadn't swatted these flies yet. "Civil custody," Karen repeated, savoring the words like they were fine wine. "You've ignored our warnings, Cole Tanner, and now we're taking action." She jabbed a finger at me, her pale skin flushing redder with every syllable. "Step forward, or we'll make you." Her crew nodded in unison, a pack of trained parrots, and I couldn't hold it back anymore. A laugh bubbled up, sharp and loud, bouncing off the cedar siding. Karen's smirk faltered, her blue eyes narrowing. "Something funny?" she snapped, crossing her arms tighter. I wiped a fake tear from my eye, still chuckling, and leaned against the doorframe. "Oh, plenty," I said. "Let me get this straight. You're arresting me for what? Painting my garage beige 5 years ago? Parking my truck in my own driveway? Or is it because I don't kiss your HOA ring at those snooze fest meetings?" The beer belly guy snorted, then caught Karen's glare and straightened up, fumbling the zip ties. "This isn't a joke," she hissed, stepping closer, her floral blouse billowing like a warning flag. "You violated community standards repeatedly. We have authority here." She waved that plastic badge again, holding it up like a holy relic. I squinted at it. Sharp as scrawl on a laminated card, probably made in her kitchen. "Authority?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "Karen, you've got about as much authority as my cat, and he's smarter than this." Her crew bristled, but I didn't give them a chance to chirp. "Tell you what," I said, voice dropping low and calm. "Let's see how this plays out. How exactly are you going to take me in?" I set my coffee mug on the railing, slow and deliberate, and reached into my back pocket. Karen's smirk returned, triumphant, as beer belly lumbered forward, zip ties at the ready. "Hands out," he growled, trying to sound tough, his gut jiggling with every step. The radio woman clicked her toy, static crackling, and notebooks scribbled furiously, probably suspect resists arrest in shaky handwriting. I let them get close enough to smell beer belly's cheap cologne, then flipped open my wallet with a flick. The sun caught my badge, a real one, polished steel with town marshal etched deep, glinting like a slap in their faces. "Good to know you think you can make arrests," I said, voice steady as granite. "Because right now, you're impersonating law enforcement and attempting a kidnapping. That's a felony, folks." The silence hit like a brick. Karen's smirk vanished, her mouth dropping open, her badge trembling in her hand. Beer belly froze mid-step, zip ties slipping from his sausage fingers to the porch boards with a clatter. Radio woman's toy went silent, her sunglasses sliding clean off her nose, and notebook's pen hovered, ink dripping onto his page. Rusty yawned. Stretching out like this was his cue to nap. I crossed my arms, badge still gleaming, and let the weight sink in. What are you implying? Karen stammered, her voice a pitch higher, her confidence crumbling like wet sand. Implying? I said, stepping forward, towering over her stocky frame. I'm telling you, unless you're off my property in 5 seconds, I'm arresting you for real. Clock's ticking. Sweat beaded on Beer Belly's forehead, dripping down his flushed face. Radio Woman took a step back, clutching her prop like it'd save her. Karen's hand shook, her laminated card wobbling, but she tried to rally. This is outrageous. We're enforcing. For I cut in, voice flat. They flinched. 3. Notebook dropped his pad, scrambling to grab it. 2. Beer Belly bolted, waddling toward the sidewalk, Radio Woman hot on his heels. Karen stood her ground a beat longer, eyes wide with panic, then spun on her heel, shouting, "This isn't over," as she fled with her posse, a herd of spooked rats scattering down Juniper Lane. I watched them go, badge still in hand, Rusty purring beside me. The street fell quiet again, the sun climbing higher, but a grin tugged at my lips. Amusement mixed with disbelief. What kind of circus had just rolled through my yard? I picked up my mug, coffee cold now, and shook my head. Karen wasn't done. I knew her type, stubborn as a mule and twice as mean. She'd be back, and I'd be ready. The Marshal versus the HOA Queen? Game on. The next day dawned lazy and warm, the kind of morning where the sun lingers low, turning Juniper Lane into a golden postcard. I stepped outside in my boots and flannel, Rusty weaving between my legs, ready to haul the trash cans to the curb. It was pickup day, and I liked the routine, kept me grounded after years of chasing petty thieves and drunkards as town marshal. But when I rounded the house, the curb was empty. No cans, no bags, just a stretch of bare sidewalk glinting in the light. I scratched my head, figuring maybe the truck came early, until I caught a flash of red across the street. There she was, Karen Thompson, perched on her lawn like a vulture, arms crossed over her chubby frame, that red floral blouse screaming against the green of her grass. Her short blonde hair bobbed as she tilted her head, a satisfied smirk curling her lips, pale skin flushed with petty triumph. I narrowed my eyes, the dots connecting fast. She'd snatched my trash cans, some kind of HOA revenge for yesterday's badge drop. Rusty hissed, sensing my mood, and I took a deep breath, stomping over to the mailbox to see if she'd left a calling card. Sure enough, stuffed inside was an envelope with the HOA's tacky stamp. A little house with Juniper Lane in swirly font. I ripped it open, the paper crackling, and scanned the typed nonsense. Due to non-compliance with community standards, it read, "You are hereby banned from waste disposal services, prohibited from parking in your garage, and required to attend a mandatory meeting to address your inappropriate behavior." I snorted, tearing it in half right there, the pieces fluttering to the ground like confetti. Banned from my own trash? My garage? This wasn't an HOA. It was a clown college, and Karen was the dean. I glanced back at her, still smirking, and decided to let it slide for now. I had a shift at the station, real work to do, not this sandbox squabble. But when I got home that afternoon, the circus had escalated. An orange traffic cone sat smack in my driveway, a plastic notice taped to a wooden stake beside it, flapping in the breeze. Garage closed by order of the HOA. It declared in bold marker, like some official decree. I stared, jaw dropping, then laughed, a deep, belly-shaking roar that echoed down the street. Rusty darted out, sniffing the cone like it was an alien invader. Across the way, 2 of Karen's cronies lurked, Beer Belly and Notebook, green polos wrinkled from a day of plotting. Beer Belly leaned against a tree, guts spilling over his belt, while Notebook scribbled furiously, probably logging my non-compliance with their cone. I marched over, ripped the notice off, and chucked the cone onto the sidewalk with a satisfying thud. That's when Karen stormed out, her floral blouse billowing like a war banner, her pale face redder than a tomato. "You can't remove that!" she shrieked, waving her laminated badge like a sword. "Can I?" I said, holding the cone aloft, grinning. "In my own driveway." She stomped closer, pointing at the crumpled notice. "This is an HOA sanction. You can't ignore community rules." Her Her voice hit a pitch that could have cracked glass, and I took a slow breath, fighting the urge to laugh in her face. "Karen," I said, low and calm, "you don't have authority to ban my garage, or anything else. You're just annoying me now." Her eyes bulged, indignation sparking, but before she could fire back, I turned, slammed the door, and let the silence hang. Inside, I poured a glass of water, watching through the window as she huffed back to her cronies, gesticulating wildly. I figured that'd be it. Another failed stunt, another retreat. But the next day, my phone buzzed mid-shift at the station. It was Tom, a neighbor who'd stayed sane amid the HOA madness. "Cole," he said, voice tight, "cops are at your house." I froze, coffee spilling on my desk. "What?" "2 cars," he said. "Said they got a tip about a guy with a gun on your property." I cursed under my breath, grabbing my keys. "Karen." She called the real police, spinning some lie to sick them on me. I sped home, tires screeching, and pulled up to find 2 deputies, good guys Mike and Sarah, chatting on my lawn. Karen stood across the street, arms crossed, playing the concerned citizen, her smirk barely hidden. Mike spotted me, raising a hand. "Hey, boss," he said, sheepish. "Got a report, suspicious armed guy here." I glared at Karen. "Let me guess, from her." She gasped, hand to chest, all fake innocence. "I just heard concerns, safety first." Sarah sighed, rolling her eyes. "No threat here, Cole. Looks like a prank call." I nodded, arms crossed. "File it, then." And Karen, "False reports are trouble. Watch yourself." Her face went scarlet, but she said nothing, just stormed off as the deputies left. I stood there, watching her go, knowing this was her escalating. She'd pulled the law into her game, and I'd push back harder. The sun barely peeked over the rooftops the next morning when a low rumble jolted me awake, a heavy truck grinding to a halt outside my house. I stumbled to the window, still in my pajama pants, rubbing sleep from my eyes. Down on Juniper Lane, a crew of workers spilled from a beat-up van, orange vests glowing against the dawn, armed with shovels, excavators, and a stack of cones that screamed trouble. My stomach sank. This wasn't road work, not with Karen Thompson smirking across the street, her red floral blouse a beacon of chaos, arms crossed over her chubby frame like she'd just won the lottery. I threw on a shirt, boots slapping the floor as I bolted downstairs, Rusty darting after me with a curious meow. The front door banged open, and I strode out, the crisp air hitting my face. The crew leader, a stocky guy with a clipboard and a hard hat, turned as I approached, his weathered face creasing with a polite nod. "Morning, sir," he said, voice gravelly. "We're here to fix underground pipes. Got a leak report." I stopped short, glancing at Karen, her blonde hair glinting, her pale cheeks flushed with glee. "A leak," I said, crossing my arms. "Who ordered this?" He flipped a page. "Karen Thompson, HOA president. Said it's urgent. Water line breach on your property." I almost laughed, the absurdity hitting me like a brick. My yard was dry as a bone. No puddles, no soggy patches, just grass and gravel. "Let me see that," I said, snatching the work order. There it was, her name scrawled in block letters, a fake emergency to tear up my land. I handed it back, voice low. "There's no leak. You're not touching my yard. Pack up and go." The leader hesitated, glancing at his crew, who'd already started unloading tools. "Sir, we're here now, and now you're leaving." I cut in, pulling my wallet from my pocket. The badge flashed, town marshal, cold steel in the morning light, and his eyes widened, a swallow catching in his throat. "Right," he muttered, turning to his team. "Guys, wrap it up." Shovels clattered back into the van as Karen stormed over, her belly jiggling, her smirk morphing into a snarl. "You can't do this," she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger. "The HOA controls neighborhood infrastructure. This is for safety." I stepped closer, towering over her, my shadow cutting across her flushed face. "Safety," I said, voice calm but edged. "You're digging up my yard for a lie. That's trespassing and fraud, Karen. I've got authority to arrest you. Want to test it?" Her mouth flapped open, then shut, a fish gasping on dry land. She huffed, threw her hands up, and stomped back to her side, muttering curses. I thought that'd be her limit, but a week later, the mail brought a new gem, an HOA letter, thick as a pamphlet, stamped with their ridiculous logo. Disciplinary review, it blared. Due to repeated infractions, your residency is under evaluation. Your presence is no longer desired in Juniper Lane. Infractions like defying HOA authority and disrupting community harmony, code for shutting down her stunts. They wanted me evicted from my own house. I laughed so hard Rusty bolted off the couch, staring at me like I'd lost it. The HOA didn't own my deed, my mortgage, or a damn thing. They were bluffing, and Karen was the dealer. The mandatory meeting was set for Friday night, and I went, badge in pocket, just to watch her crash. The community room buzzed with neighbors, some glaring, some curious. Chairs lined up like a kangaroo court. Karen stood at the front, a stack of papers on the table, her floral blouse clashing with the beige walls. "We're here to address Cole Tanner's problematic behavior," she began, voice dripping with sanctimony. "He refuses to cooperate with our community." I leaned back, arms crossed, and cut in. "Cut the crap, Karen. You want me out, say it." She flushed, stammering. "Well, given your offenses, what offenses?" I said, standing. "Fake arrests? Calling cops with lies? Digging up my yard? You've got no power to evict me. This isn't your kingdom." The room went silent, heads turning. Karen gripped her papers, knuckles white. "You don't fit here," she spat. I grinned. "Good. I'm staying." Murmurs rippled. Some neighbors smirked. Others shifted uncomfortably. She'd overplayed her hand, and they saw it. I walked out, leaving her fuming, but I knew Karen wasn't done. She'd try something bigger, dirtier. Her pride wouldn't let her quit. I climbed into bed that night, Rusty purring beside me, and braced for her next move. The Marshal versus the HOA queen was heating up, and I'd be damned if she won. A week after the HOA's sham meeting, I woke to sirens wailing down Juniper Lane, a sound that snapped me upright in bed. Rusty bolted to the window, fur bristling as I stumbled over, peering through the blinds. 2 county enforcement cars sat in my driveway, their lights slashing red and blue across the cedar siding. My pulse kicked up, not from fear, but from the gut certainty of who'd pulled this stunt. Across the street, Karen Thompson lingered, her red floral blouse a garish splash against her manicured lawn, arms crossed, that smug smirk plastered on her chubby face. Her short blonde hair glinted in the dawn, her pale skin flushed with the thrill of her latest gambit. I yanked on jeans and a flannel, boots thudding as I hit the porch just as 2 inspectors climbed out, middle-aged, clipboard in hand, vests crisp with authority. The lead guy, balding with a tired squint, nodded at me. "Mr. Tanner? Got a complaint. Structural irregularities on your property. Need to inspect." I leaned against the railing, arms crossed, and shot a look at Karen, still gloating. "Irregularities?" I said, voice dry. "Who filed it?" He hesitated, flipping a page. "Juniper Lane HOA. Says unauthorized construction, bad plumbing, pest infestation." I laughed. A short, hard bark. "Condemn my house." She'd gone full lunatic. "Come on in," I said, swinging the door wide. "Check it all. I've got nothing to hide." The inspectors blinked, surprised I didn't fight, but I knew my place was clean, up to code, solid as rock. They trudged inside, measuring walls, tapping pipes, poking cabinets, while I brewed coffee, Rusty weaving between their legs. Karen paced outside, her posse trickling over, beer belly and notebook, green polos sagging, watching like vultures. 2 hours later, the younger inspector, a lanky kid with glasses, approached, scratching his head. "Sir, we found nothing. No violations, no pests. It's all good." I grinned, sipping my coffee. "So the complaint's bogus?" He shifted, awkward. "Yeah, pretty much." Karen's smirk faltered as they packed up, her floral blouse billowing as she marched over. "You're overreacting," she snapped before they'd even left. "It's safety protocol." I stepped forward, badge glinting in my pocket. "Safety, huh? Inspectors say my house is perfect. You lied again." Her face reddened, but I wasn't done. "I'm filing a harassment complaint with the county. Misuse of public resources, too. Enjoy that. She sputtered, fists clenched, but the inspectors just shrugged, climbing into their cars. I dialed the county office right there, voice calm as I reported her. Every fake call, every stunt. Karen stormed off, slamming her door, but the dominoes were falling. Word spread fast. Neighbors whispered, the HOA's cracks showing. A few days later, Tom called, voice buzzing. They're investigating her, Cole. Turns out she's been fining folks for nothing, pocketing cash for events, parties for her clique. I whistled. Embezzlement. And more, he said. She skipped elections, been president illegally for years. The reckoning came at a special HOA meeting. Standing room only, the community hall thick with tension. Karen stood at the podium, papers trembling in her hands. Her floral blouse wilted under the lights. This is a witch hunt, she cried, but the crowd wasn't buying it. A county auditor took the mic, laying out the dirt. $30,000 missing, shady contractors, forged complaints. Residents gasped, then shouted, her loyalists shrinking back. The board voted her out, unanimous, her pleas drowned in boos. She threatened lawsuits, but the cops were already there, real cuffs clicking on her wrists as she shrieked, dragged out like the dictator she played. Karen was gone. House sold to pay fines, vanished from Juniper Lane like a bad dream. The HOA reformed, rules eased, fines scrapped, a new board vowing fairness. I stood on my porch weeks later, rusty purring the for sale sign across the street, a quiet trophy. Peace settled in, thick and sweet, the neighborhood mine again, not hers. I'd faced her fake arrests, her yard invasions, her lies, and one with a badge and a backbone. Sipping coffee, I watched the sun rise, grinning. The marshal had outlasted the queen, and damn, it felt good.